Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I am Ajahn Sona, and we are doing okay. Last week I gave you an update on the polar vortex's effect on Canada at the 51st latitude, 51 point something latitude. 1,200 meters in the mountains. It was 40 below zero, and things went a little sideways, as usual. We are still limping along. We have a rented diesel generator, which required rewiring some of our systems, and we end up purchasing a new small Honda generator. So I think we have 6 generators now. We have 6 generators on site. 4 of them work. And it is thought now it was above zero yesterday. What in Canada we would call shirt sleeve weather. +1. Yeah, we have muddled through. We have fairly resilient systems. We have several backups in terms of water and all of this kind of thing. So we muddled through. This is to be expected. Doesn't matter where you go. Monasteries, as the Buddha pointed out, like there is no place on the planet that's just safe from things. Monasteries are as vulnerable and unstable as any other place on the planet. In fact, whole countries, of course, in history, that's China, for instance. China was a very Buddhist country in the Mahayana tradition up to 1950, and then the Marxist Revolution came in. The Red Army went around. I think there were 500,000 monasteries in China, and 2.5 million monastics, monks and nuns. They had a thriving nuns population as well in China. And that was wiped out by the Red Army. And of course, 10 years later, they also overtook Tibet and destroyed many of the monastery systems and monastic life there. Places like Vietnam, of course, were overrun. North Korea, of course. Korea was a thriving Buddhist country, and they had an order, the Choge order, monastic order, and that was in the North Korea. It completely eradicated. South Korea had problems with, of course, the war and a disruption. Japan actually invaded Korea in 1912 and interrupted their monastic structures. So lots of, there is no safe place on the planet. There is no secure, warm, comfy thing because you're a meditator that nothing will happen. What it is, the only secure place that's going to exist is in your mind. And you need to be prepared for the exigencies of life, all of the ups and downs, and you need to respond to this with equanimity. We've just gone through more than 3 years of this COVID sweeping across the planet, around and around it goes. How was your response to that? How do you feel looking back on it? Did you remain equanimous? I gave a talk just at the beginning of the COVID, at the invitation of the Thai monks of North America. They said, can you give a talk about how we should handle this? And I mostly emphasized equanimity because there's going to be all kinds of wild situations, and the planet hadn't had a major pandemic for 100 years. So in retrospect, you can examine your own minds. How were you? Were you equanimous in the previous 1,000 days or so? Well, those are opening remarks. Let us go on to the questions. Pia is still away. She's moderating, though. And Metta is behind the microphone asking questions. So please submit questions that you have. Don't be shy to submit them in the question bar. And perhaps we'll get to them. We'll try to get to them. So let's begin, Metta.
The first question is from Gustavo. The Buddha mentioned other meditations such as Maranasati, etc., but do we know if he recommended any of them over the others?
Yes, Gustavo. There are classically something like 38 meditation subjects. So if you think there's, but the way you frame the question is that he had other meditations. I don't know what you presume his central meditation was, but there are traditionally 38 topics of meditation. Some of them are primarily for developing more capacity for attention, and some are for deeper states of serenity, the samadhi meditations, and some of them are more for clarifying your realizations about the nature of reality. Those are sort of vipassana type meditations, and they all are useful and depending on the personality. So they're assigned to some degree. They're assigned to different personalities by a teacher. If you're working on your own, you'll have to self-diagnose, and you probably can recognize perhaps. So if one's problem is that you're angry all the time, then types of meditation which are more towards softening up, like the loving kindness meditations, would be appropriate. If you're experiencing lucidity and balance, then you need to reflect more about the impermanence of things, the insubstantiality of things, the nature of suffering, why one suffers. Maranasati, meaning a mindfulness of death, is a important, very important. Some say it's the king of meditations, because a lot of philosophies, a lot of attitudes to life are by people who have left out the important reality of their own personal death. Sometimes with science, for instance. A lot of these scientific theories, they're science, etc., and people who are committed to a scientific sort of worldview quite often ignore the fact that they have a very limited and uncertain lifespan personally. They're interested in these grand scientific theories, and they're waiting that perhaps a computer will be fashioned that will understand the Big Bang, or how reconciliation of quantum mechanics with Einstein's relativity. Quite often they're not conscious really of their own mortality, and if it matters, they're somewhat dismissive of this. So death meditation is very important, and people report this in their lives, that they were kind of unconscious of their own mortality, and then something happened close to them, so they lost somebody, or they had a near-death experience or something like that, and then suddenly it hits them in a shocking way that, is there a point to this? Is there something they should be doing aside from collecting ideas? This is the existential realization that death meditation does, mindfulness of death. So This is a little survey then of there are multiple types of meditations, and it depends on the personality and the person. And it's best in conjunction with a good teacher, but many people can't, access a teacher instantly and get a long-term relationship where they get to know each other and so forth. So you try to figure it out through various maybe some advice in writing or for different general personality configurations. The commentaries, such as the Visuddhimagga, the Path of Purification, classify certain characters as predominantly angry, predominantly greedy, predominantly deluded or muddled, hazy kind of thing. And then there's other temperaments like faith temperament and intelligent temperament. And then they offer certain meditation subjects that are optimal for that type of person, where they should, the environment which supports their development, the people they should be around, even how they should walk or dress, food that would be suitable, etc., for different types of temperaments. It's very psychological. It's psychology way ahead of Western ideas of psychology. So that's what I can offer Gustavo. Yeah, next.
The next question is from the question bar. I would like to know if the use of psychedelic drugs can be considered as intoxication within the precepts the Buddha gave us. There's a significant differentiation in scientific literature as well between, quote, opiate drugs like alcohol and heroin and psychedelic drugs such as magic mushrooms, LSD, and ayahuasca. I tried a couple of different psychedelic drugs earlier in my life and can see how they open my mind without intoxicating me or making me addicted to them in any way. I'm wondering if the Buddha knew about such substances in his time, since most of them existed in different cultures, and what his stand about it was. Can these substances be considered intoxicants when consumed in a properly monitored way and for mind-expanding purposes?
Yeah, the response to that, and it comes up quite often in this time with new research on psychedelic treatments, etc. The words for under the fifth precept of abstaining from intoxicants is really that which causes negligence. And specifically, they name, especially for the monks, they name alcohol. And the rule for the monks is that not even a drop which would drip off the end of a blade of grass it is a confessional offense for a monk. You are just not to take intoxicants under any circumstances in terms of what they name it specifically as alcohol. Other substances, like what about tea or coffee and so forth? How do you diagnose this? And what about if you go in for surgery and they want to give you morphine or things like this? So we have to understand what intoxication is, or what is the core aspiration there. People often, one of the world's most popular painkillers is alcohol. And there are other types of drugs that are used for psychic, relief of psychic pain, just to dull the suffering of existence or the particular situation one is in. And some of them are addictive. By the way, addiction is primarily to do with personality. Although, for instance, alcohol is widely used in North America and Europe. Only about 5% perhaps of the population is addicted to it. It's a response. Addiction is a response to the drug. People become addicted to all kinds of things. And so that it's not simply the drug, but it's a tendency in the personality. It fulfills some sort of need or want, and that's what the addiction is. So you can get a clue from this that the monks are not even to have one single drop of alcohol, and if they do, they must confess it. And even if they don't know that the alcohol was in something, they must confess it anyway. The Buddha really cuts off any possible excuse for for having these things. Psychedelics are a totally different realm. This is not. This is something that distorts the whole process of the brain. And some people claim that it's beneficial. And it seems that in certain cultures it is taken. By the way, you asked about the time of the Buddha. There was a drink called Soma, S-O-M-A, that was used at that time in Vedic circles as and it apparently is a psychedelic or an hallucinogen, etc. The Buddha certainly never encouraged it or never commented on it at all as a positive thing. He just said no intoxicants. What is interesting is that one of the excuses for a monk violating a rule, gets him off the hook for violating a rule, is pain. If they're intoxicated by pain. So pain itself is an intoxicant. And so if people are going to the hospital and they're worried about taking morphine, or even near the end of life, they're going to a hospice and they have cancer, their bones are riddled with cancer and so forth, terrible pain, and they're worried about the effects of morphine, I would advise them to take the morphine to reduce the pain, because the pain will drive you out of your mind. And it's more of the morphine in that situation reduces intoxication. But if you're taking morphine or heroin or something because you have psychological issues, not physical issues, it's painful, but it's not not reducing your intoxication, it's increasing. You get more muddled. You're making the situation worse. So for psychological distress, I would say don't use such drugs as morphine or heroin or those kind of things. You must take up a psychological or a spiritual practice which deals with the cause of your psychic pain, your psychological pain. It seems, and I've heard about this all my life now I'm almost 70, so I've been aware of this therapy using psychedelics, first used in the psychiatric hospitals, by the way. LSD and so forth were used. And before that, some of the native drugs were used and explored by psychologists and psychiatrists in the West as well. The literature is out there for these things. And it was made illegal at a certain point, and partly because it wasn't, there were other causes for the non-use of this. Psychedelics were a threat to some degree. It seemed to be a threat to the nation's call for young men to go to war. If you're aware of the 60s, there was an outburst of advocacy of peace a peace and love. And a lot of the roots of that were the exposure to psychedelic drugs, which often have that result. They shift your perception and make you think that why are we so angry and why are we so nasty to each other? Why don't we, isn't love better? So that's a threat in some ways to the state if they are asking you to go off to war. You don't want to do that. You become a war resistor and so forth. So there's all kinds of mixtures of motives behind making these things illegal. But psychedelic drugs shouldn't be just taken randomly for fun. The whole idea was it's a therapeutic idea. And I personally have never taken LSD or any psychotropic type of drug in my life, so I can't talk about it from a personal experience. By the way, that might be surprising since before I was a monk, I was a musician. I played in rock bands, and I studied jazz specifically and classical music. So that type of lifestyle is quite often associated with use of drugs, but I never did do the psychedelia stuff. So I can't speak from personal experience, but I have heard that, when you're really messed up and you don't have time to put in 10 years in a monastery straightening yourself out or something, that psychedelics might be a form of therapy. And there's this ayahuasca thing as well. So I can't write that off, and I can't say that it's a terrible violation of the fifth precept either. But at the same time, I'm not an expert on that, so I can't say, just go ahead, take the LSD. No, it just is beyond, outside of my area of expertise, but I just want to give you some information about what that fifth precept means and circumstances where the treatment of physical pain, it may be necessary to take things like morphine, etc. So this is not the first time I've answered these kind of questions, but it seems that there's a lot of questions out there about the use of these drugs. Yeah, let's go on now.
The next question is also from the live chat, and staying around this topic of potential addictions. This is from Daniil. Could you please explain the drawbacks of sense pleasures and how to remove intense addictions?
Well, probably you wouldn't be asking the question if you didn't find something problematic about addiction to sense pleasures. So this is what happens, is that in our naive life, when we're teenagers and so forth, perhaps we think, I can't wait to be free to just pursue any kind of pleasure, and that would be wonderful. And then you find out, if you're somewhat intelligent, that there's a problem with it. It's a very brief thing. It gets old, and then you have to increase the intensity, and then you feel hollow after, and you eventually your senses become jaded. So sights and sounds, smells, tastes, touches, even ideas, you get jaded, callous to it. It loses, the thrill is gone. And then what? So the Buddha is pointing this out. This is human nature, that the thirst is never satisfied. The Buddha, in the Dhammapada, there's a verse, the rain could turn to gold, and still your thirst would not be satisfied. As you can see, there are people with billions of dollars that they don't report satisfaction. If they're honest, they say, what do you do with $1 billion? I mean, what can you do with $1 billion that you can't do with $1 million? How much soup can you eat? In other words, certainly if you're starving and impoverished and everything, it's clear that it would be better to have some more and more soup, sir. The sensory pleasures have limits, but most people don't know the alternative. And this is where meditation comes in. This is an alternative, a more satisfying alternative to the pleasures of the senses and addictions to the senses. And so this is why one starts meditating, developing concentration. Say, use the breath. It's very effective to increase your sense of contentment, and the desire, the need for sensory stimulation starts to reduce and fall away. You start to feel more satisfied with ordinary life. Like ordinary life feels okay. And that's because your capacity to be attentive and more or less interested in ordinary life is increasing, and the need for extraordinary experiences falls away. And most people don't think that way. They keep trying to up the dose, and it just eventually just wear out. But the actual solution to it is to reduce the dose, and then your sensitivity comes back. Your sense of contentment with ordinariness comes back, and it's a more satisfactory way of conducting your life. Yeah.
The next question is from the question bar. And one moment, I lost my question here. The next question is from Min in Burma. What is your advice for someone dealing with self-hatred, loneliness, and depression?
Yeah, that is a very common condition, by the way. So lots of people maybe keep it a secret, or but I've talked to so many people. I give thousands of one-on-one sort of interviews with people, and this self-loathing, or at least self-criticism, is very common, and it's a strange thing. Part of it is that we have access to our own minds. Nobody else has access to your mind, but you do. And you see every thought that comes up, and you find it somewhat disappointing and so forth. But this is just increases the negative. Being negative about yourself just increases negativity. So the way out is to realize that the nature of self-anger is unwise attention to your own faults. You're unwisely attending to your faults. You should not be looking at yourself with, how do you know it's unwise? Because it's accompanied by anger. And anger, sustained anger, produces depression as well. So that's another form of aversion. So when you look at yourself and you look at your faults, it's all right to have faults, but you look wisely. And that means it's accompanied by compassion or goodwill. Just like a mother looks at their 2-year-old, and their 2-year-old has got snot all over their face, or the food all over their face, or they had their hands in dirt and so forth, and they have many faults, but the mother doesn't look at it with anger. They don't look at them with anger. They look at them with loving kindness, and they realize, well, what we have to do is teach them not to do that. So they repeat that, and they do it with the right attitude. They do it with the right spirit, so the child is not afraid or disappointed in themselves, but they just need to learn. So there are things about us, each of us, that are not the best in the world. There's all kinds of things that we could improve on, but we need to improve with goodwill, not with ill will. We defeat ourselves by, using a harsh and critical attitude towards our own deficiencies. So this is the first realization. This is what the Buddha articulates beautifully. He just does this beautifully. He says, this coming at things with a stick instead of a carrot is a bad idea. The stick needs to be set aside, and goodwill and loving kindness come in. And then it's an interesting process of education. As you know, you learn things along the way. All of us, humans particularly, are very just ignorant when they're born. They don't have any skills. And you just learn. And it isn't amazing how you learn, just learn to read, learn arithmetic, learn how to conduct yourself. It's a learning experience. And there's no point in being harsh or brutal about it. It's just no point whatsoever. It's just a learning process. So we become our own good mother, We become a good mother to ourselves, a good parent to ourselves, and say, no, you just talk to yourself like, now, dear, those are not kind of good, positive thoughts. So we're going to let those go, and we're going to switch over to improvements and so forth, but with goodwill. And that's the attitude. That's the inner voice that you need to switch to. And that will help you. You will learn as much as you can learn. Remember, not everybody has all of the talents and so forth. But to the degree that we develop ourselves. But the inner voice is patient and goodwill. And it gets things done. And it doesn't destroy. So that's how you get out of that, yeah.
The next question is from Benjamin from Sweden. I just started an arborist business, and it's great fun. Did the Buddha give any advice on doing business?
Yes, the Buddha was not against business whatsoever. He didn't seem to think that being a merchant or a trader, not a traitor, but a trader, people had to travel long distances to trade with nearby states or provinces. And it was quite a demanding and difficult task. And you took your goods and then you bartered for others and so forth. And he had lots of advice about sometimes you're the boss and sometimes you're the employee. So he has good advice. He has whole suttas on this. So one of the things he says, well, you have to be honest. You can't cheat. You can't cheat with weights and measures or fast products or something like that. You have to be honest. Of course, you're there to make a profit, and in terms of if you're the employer, then you need to treat your employees with justice, with not asking them too much. But if you're the employee, you need to show up on time, and you need to do the job, etc. So, and we have to understand people have lives as well. So sometimes they're sick and so forth. We have to build that into the situation. So this is the attitude. You bring a fair and just attitude to the situation. And sometimes if you're skilled, and you'll make more money than other people, and that's all right. The wealth is not a bad idea. But wealth is, what are you going to do with it? So you can't abandon the idea of generosity. You share to some degree your wealth. You use it for your own benefit as well. So the Buddha says, divide your wealth. After you've taken care of the cost of your residence and your food and your clothing and your medicine for your family and yourself, then you might have some left over. And what's left over should be divided into 4 parts. One part is for saving. So you need to put something in a very safe kind of saving thing, like a savings account. One part can be invested. You can make money with money. You can invest in a business. Another part needs to be used for your own enjoyment. So you need to set some aside for you go on a holiday, whatever it is that you enjoy. Maybe you want to buy a boat or something like this, and then one part is for sharing. You support charities or religious structures, or people. Some sort of even animal welfare or things like that. So you have 4 parts to your excess money: 1 part to be saved, 1 part to be invested, 1 part to be used for your own enjoyment and pleasure, and 1 part to be set aside for charity and sharing. And that's the advice of the Buddha. By the way, the Buddha is at a certain point in history, a very interesting point in history, where something called money has come into the culture. And money in the form of like coins and gold, etc., as a means of exchange. And this arrival of this new idea, it affects everything. It is perhaps you've heard this story about the Aladdin's lamp, that you rub the Aladdin's lamp and this genie appears and you get your wish granted, That, I think, is just an interesting story about the nature of money. Money is a weird thing. Money is an abstract concept. It's just a piece of, like in modern times, it's a piece of paper. And the paper is, like if you're stranded on a desert island, the paper is worthless, right? It has no intrinsic value whatsoever. It's only when you have an agreement, an abstract agreement with everybody, that this paper is worth something, that it can pretty well get anything you wish. It's the wish-fulfilling gem. It's the Aladdin's lamp. Anything you can buy, anything you want can be bought with this. Isn't that a strange, this is a new idea. Before that, they just traded goods, or shared things. So this affects everything. It's a weird and abstract concept. In the present time, we're trying to get our minds around this, what is it called? Cryptocurrency. Like, it's just a few numbers, computer numbers. So they're saying this is currency outside of local currencies, and it's just another abstract thing. But it's magic. It can get you anything, and all it is numbers in a computer program. And we're trying to process this. It's still like a mystery idea to us. What do you mean crypto? What? Where is it? But it's the same as this idea of money. Money means everything to everybody. Isn't it interesting? A child when you're about 4 or 5, you start to be interested in money because you got some gum from it. Like you bought you got some candy with it. You got a toy with it, and right then you see this gets me what I want. How early in life the children get the idea of this, what this coin can do, or this piece of paper. Isn't it amazing? This is a test. This is an intelligence test and a spiritual test. What are you going to do with this money? You see people who seem to have no ability to manage this money. It vanishes in the blink of an eye. They win a lottery, and in a year they're on welfare. Others manage it well, etc. So money is also a test. It's a test. How well do you manage magic, the magic of money? So the Buddha doesn't dismiss it. It's part of reality, but you need to know how to handle it. Yeah.
The next question is from the live chat from Chloe in Portland. Dear Ajahn, did the Buddha believe a utopia was possible in this world, if not in his lifetime, eventually?
Yeah, the sutta, which is investigates this, is called the Aganya Sutta, and he shows the underlying reasons why utopias appear and why they decline and why basically nightmarish scenarios appear. So think about Europe before the First World War. You see the height of European culture. They had the best, just an incredibly refined art, music, knowledge, science, philosophy, architecture, urban structures, and then it became a disaster. How do good things happen in societies, and how do they decline? And the primary core is virtue. When individuals are nonviolent and honest, sexually reserved, they're not. They do not thieve. They do not steal, and they're sober. Then you will have a good result. That society will increase and in well-being and happiness. And then it will. But when murder and theft, sexual misconduct, and lying and intoxicants become prolific, then that society will decline into a state of unimaginable depravity. And it's just simple. It's not about technology. It's about people's virtue. So in a virtue society, things get better. And when the virtue starts to unravel, it becomes a nightmare. It becomes very, very bad, as you can see. And you can see various situations on earth where murder and rape and cheating and thievery and continuous intoxication it's just people die early, accidents happen, everything looks dark and despairing. The environment around them is polluted, and everybody suffers, including the very environment, and the animals suffer, the humans suffer. Everybody declines. Everything around it declines. When you go to a virtuous community, everything brightens up. People are not afraid anymore. They're not in despair anymore. Their happiness increases, and even the environment cheers up, and the animals, etc., are happy and playful, etc. So this is the cause of the rise and fall of empires, of villages, of households, of everything. Virtue is the core. Yeah.
The next question is from the live chat from Brian in Penticton, British Columbia, Canada. Is the grief we experience for recently departed loved ones something to be actively removed, like feelings of anger or greed?
Yes, except that a grief is just a word. It often is not adequate to cover the real feelings. So let's first say to ourselves, well, what I'm feeling is not just grief. It's actually a much richer experience than that. And part of it is there's a lot of love there. It's just real, like quite often you don't know what you got till it's gone, and then the realization of love, and maybe the thinking, I don't know what I was a little impatient about there, or I made some bad remarks and everything. What was I thinking? This was about love. So this warmth that comes up from love is very, very important. To separate out from grief. So why do people not want to let go of the grief? Because they don't want to let go of the love. So I would say keep the love, let go of the grief. And the grief is like, I don't want them not here. But that's crazy, isn't it? They're gone. They're not here. From a Buddhist point of view, they're somewhere though, and they're somewhere, and it's just like they moved out, maybe had to go get a job across the country, and they're over there, and every time you think about them, you think, hope they're doing well. So that from the Buddhist point of view, they are somewhere, and I hope they're doing well. So we keep that up, but we say, but I know, I'm all growing up, nobody lives forever. People die. That's all right. No news there. There's no news. People die. And I'm perfectly in touch with that reality and that truth. People die, and they die suddenly. There are no sort of unexpected deaths or untimely deaths. All deaths are timely. It happens to children, it happens to old people, it happens to middle-aged people. Accidents happen, illnesses happen, and we know that, don't we? Or do we? Well, if we don't know it, if we're shocked by it, we have to say, okay, come on. That is no way to live, pretending that these things don't happen. So we say, I need to get philosophical about this. I need to realize this happens. That's the world I live in. I must face that, and I can't go around being nervous about that. I have to accept that. On the other hand, I do not have to let go of love. I loved them, I appreciated them, and we had some funny times, and we had some angry times, and we had this, and we had that, and those are all stories, and they're rich stories, yeah, rich experience. So I don't need to let go of that. That's a beautiful aspect of it. But the negative stuff, the pointless stuff, I need to let go of that, yeah.
The next question is from the live chat from Upasaka Mustafa. If there is infinite past and future lifetimes, so too there are infinite possibilities. It is obvious to me that all streams of consciousness eventually and inevitably will reach Nibbana at the end, and since we have had lifetimes in the hell realms in the past, it seems that this is all just a game. I am struggling to regain my zeal for enlightenment. I guess metta is the solution, but I can't see the relation. Insight, please.
Yeah, hasty conclusion on your part there. There is no inevitability about eventually winding up at enlightenment. Enlightenment is not inevitable. It's a result of causes put in. You will see schools of Buddhism, the Mahayana, where they have this idea that the Buddha, spiritual practitioners are going to commit themselves to stay in samsara until all beings are enlightened. This is not the original teachings. The Buddha comes for the benefit of many, and many people have. And you can see in history that many people's lives have improved because they encountered the teachings of the Buddha. Their hearts were relieved in some ways. Fear was reduced, anger was reduced, goodwill and loving kindness was increased. And many people benefited, but not everybody. Lots of people didn't hear about it or didn't take up the teachings, and there's nothing inevitable about it. It is, the Buddha was asked actually, will everybody does everybody get enlightened? And he said, I never say how many, I just say how. So all we're left with is, if you do this, this will result. But if you don't do it, it will not result. So there is nothing inevitable about this. There is no idea of universal salvation. And especially if you do think that, it's virtually infinite past and infinite numbers of beings, then it's quite the opposite. It is not, there is infinite numbers of suffering beings still. And so beings have had an infinite amount of time to get out of Nibbana, and they're not there yet. So it doesn't look like that. There's only those who hear the message and determinedly practice it in a sensible way will get good results, but not otherwise than that. It's somewhat hard. The message is somewhat hard to hear. It's a matter of personal effort. You can't sort of take others with you. There is no magic way out. You have to do the work, and nobody else can do it for you, and you can't do the work for anybody else. And you don't have, and the alternative is very precarious. To remain in the samsaric circle is, you don't know what'll happen. You might be flowing along nicely in this life, but what if you manage not to get out? If you end up in, even in another human life, are you going to lose the Dhamma? What will happen? And then one thing leads to another, and then it's very uncertain, and the potential for suffering is great. So we're not, you really can't afford not to be motivated by this. Lots of people aren't motivated. They don't have long-term visions. As you see, a lot of people have only, they live for the moment, and they forget that yesterday they had a terrible experience with alcohol, and they drank too much and got sick, and then today they don't feel well, and so they take another drink. They don't think, well, I've got to not drink anymore. Or I spent all my money yesterday, and they get a little more money today, and then they spend it again. So this is very short term. Others are long term. They say, oh, well, if I want to have a good livelihood, I have to go to university, and that'll take 8 years, become a doctor or something like that. And I'm going to get in debt, etc. I have to postpone my well-being and so forth, but I'm going to do that because on the long term, it's a better strategy. So that's why there is a difference in people. Others won't go for a day. They won't put up for a day. They'd rather get immediate and shallow rewards versus long-term, deeper rewards. So each person will find out which about each person in terms of what they choose in the long-term well-being and happiness. Yeah.
The next question is from the live chat from Free Time. Dear Ajahn, I work as a care aide, and I try my best to give care from the heart. My question is, do you still accumulate merit when you get paid from your work?
Yes, you do. And the payment is a secondary matter. It's actually a reward from having done previous work. You trained and went through the system in order to qualify, and now you're getting paid for that. That's the results of your previous endeavors. Your attitude in carrying out your work will also have positive results. If of course, lots of people who are in medicine, they don't like the sick people they're taking care of. They're angry that they're stuck in this situation. They're burnt out, etc. Those are negative attitudes, and they will have negative results. But those who are in there and produce, positive feelings, carry out their duties, will have good results from this, and it's quite independent of whether they are getting paid or not. Yeah, it's a form of charity and generosity and goodwill, which has immense positive results in the future. So I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, so we will stay with the live chat. Question from Ben. Dear Ajahn, You mentioned the importance and difficulty of finding a teacher, especially for long term. Do you have practical advice for a householder in the United States to find a teacher, even virtually?
Well, the resources that you have now are just fantastic. I mean, in my days, it was, haunting obscure bookstores or hearing about some Tibetan monk that had been exiled into Canada and going searching for them. And of course, they hardly spoke English, and it was such a difficult search. Now, click on a button and here you are. Ajahn Sona is talking to you. So it's so easy now. It's the information is so available. All of the suttas have been translated and all of them are available. A number of monastic teachers are online. We have a number of physical places that you can actually go, monasteries and retreat centers. So the availability of this is extraordinary now. There's a lot of people criticizing the internet and YouTube and all this kind of stuff, but it's really astonishing. The information that you can access now is just, if you can use this medium in the right way, in a beneficial way, it's staggering, the availability of the information. So yeah, it's quite easy, and such things as this very live stream and other videos. So there's 300 of them on this channel, and I really have systematically covered most of what a layperson could possibly get to in terms of need for information. Systematic information about the Eightfold Path, about the nature of Buddhism, explanations about all of these things, the whole, what used to be obscure textbooks in dead languages are now, what's in there is now clearly translated into English and revealed to people. It is, all of the information that you might need is really there. Sometimes you need more of a personal interview chat with a teacher to get to the bottom of some of your particular personality configurations. But yeah, it's the golden age of internet Buddhism. Be appreciative. Understand how fortunate you are to have access to this. Yeah. Okay, we will be back next week if our diesel generator is working and our internet satellite dish is working, and our well and all that kind of stuff. So far, we are in pretty good shape, and we will then see you next week.